Welcome back for another deep dive. I'm John.
And I'm Jessica.
So today we're diving into English for travel, key phrases, and cultural etiquette.
Hmm.
You land in a new country, ready for adventure. But beyond the tourist spots, you want to really connect with the place.
Yeah, even if you've traveled a lot, those cultural differences can be tricky.
It's like you wouldn't wear, I don't know, swim trunks to a fancy dinner, right?
Exactly. Think of cultural etiquette as the dress code for how you interact.
Okay, so this article says it's not just about knowing phrases, but really understanding the why. Like, even hello can be different depending on where you are.
Right, and it goes deeper than that. It shows how people think. Some cultures are very direct, and others are all about being polite, even indirect.
So how you say something matters as much as what you say.
Exactly. Imagine you need to tell someone they messed up. In one culture, you might be blunt, but in another, you got to be super careful not to offend.
Makes sense. Like, I was in Italy once trying to buy train tickets, and I kept using the formal lei instead of tu. The ticket guy looked at me like I was crazy.
Uh-huh.
Later, I found out using lei with someone younger can be kind of rude.
Oh, we've all had those moments. That's why we're looking at specific scenarios so you don't step on any toes.
So let's get practical. Greetings and directions, those are usually the first things you need, right?
Yeah, and the article makes a big point about being polite when you ask for directions. Please and thank you go a long way.
But it's more than just words, right? It's about showing you respect how things are done there. Like, I heard in some places pointing with your finger is rude.
It is. You might use your whole hand or nod your head instead. Those little things show you're making an effort.
And greetings, it's not just hi to everyone. It matters who you're talking to, right?
Totally. Someone older, a stranger, in a business setting. Like in the US, hey is casual, but in the UK, they use Mr. or Mrs. more often, especially if it's formal.
So it's all about choosing the right approach, just like you'd use the right tool for a job.
Exactly. Now, once you've got greetings and directions down, what about eating out?
Ugh, restaurants. The best and the most potentially awkward.
For sure. This article talks about knowing what's on the menu, but it's also about those unspoken rules, you know?
Right, like, is it rude to eat before everyone has their food? And then there's tipping. Here it's like 15%, but I heard in Japan it's almost an insult.
It can be. Knowing that beforehand can save you some embarrassment. Imagine trying to split the bill when the host is supposed to pay for everyone.
Been there. The whole cultural dance, not just about the food.
Okay, after a good meal, maybe you want to do some shopping.
That's where it gets tricky, especially if you got to haggle. Some cultures, it's expected, like a game. Others, it's just not done.
Yeah, it's a different way of thinking about buying and selling. Like in Morocco, you gotta haggle, or they might be offended. But in the UK, most shops have set prices, so no bargaining.
So how do you know? Any clues?
Watch the locals. Are they joking with the vendors? Trying to get a better price? If so, you might be in a haggling culture. If it's all serious, stick to the price tag.
Got it. Read the room or the marketplace. All right, next, let's talk about something nobody wants, but you gotta be ready for. Emergencies.
Yeah, knowing the right phrases here can be super important, like, I need help, or call an ambulance. But it's not just the words.
Right, you gotta stay calm, speak clearly, even when you're freaking out. Maybe it helps to practice those phrases out loud beforehand.
That's a good idea. It's like training your brain for a stressful situation.
All right, we've done greetings, directions, restaurants, shopping, emergencies. What's next on our linguistic adventure?
Let's talk about transportation. That can be a real challenge in a new place.
Especially if it's like a subway system you've never seen before.
Exactly. You got to understand timetables, tickets, and know how to ask for help if you get lost. But it's not just the practical stuff.
Right, it's about the unwritten rules too, like, is it okay to talk on the phone?
hmm
Do you give up your seat for older people? It's all different everywhere.
It is. It's like being a guest in someone's house. You watch how they do things and try to fit in.
Okay, so we've got some phrases for different situations, but it sounds like there's more to it than just the words.
You got it. Knowing the phrases is the first step. The real skill is understanding those subtle, unspoken rules that control how people act. It's like learning to read between the lines of a conversation.
Okay, I'm ready to unlock those secrets. Let's dive into cultural etiquette.
Think of it like a dance, you know? Cultural etiquette is all these little moves, expressions, things you don't even talk about. You got to be aware and adjust your steps.
So how do we get better at sensing those rhythms? What should we be looking for?
Watch the locals. That's your best bet. Do they make eye contact? How close do they stand? What about their hands? How do they use them? All those tiny things tell you a lot about how they communicate.
Like being a detective, but for culture.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to ask. Most people are happy to explain their culture if you're genuinely interested and, respectful.
Speaking of, reminds me, I was in Japan, totally lost trying to find this temple. And this sweet older lady, she saw I was confused. And even though we couldn't really talk, she walked me all the way there.
Those little connections, that's what makes travel special, right? When you step outside your comfort zone and just go with it.
Totally. Okay, let's get specific. This article talks about politeness, but it's more than just please and thank you, right?
Right. Politeness can be different everywhere. Like in some places, it's polite to be indirect, especially if you disagree or want to ask for something. Instead of saying no, you might say, that could be difficult, or I'll see what I can do. It's about keeping things smooth.
Like a delicate dance with words. So you get your point across without stepping on anyone's toes.
Exactly. And then there's personal space. What feels okay in one place might be way too close or too far in another. Like Mediterranean folks, they stand close when they talk, but in Northern Europe, people like their space.
Oh, yeah. I'm a hugger, and I learned that the hard way. That awkward moment when you go for a hug and they back up like, whoa.
Yeah, you got to pay attention to those boundaries. Speaking of boundaries, what about lines? Queuing up. In the UK, they're serious about their lines. Cutting is like a huge no-no.
I saw this near fight in a bakery in London because someone cut the line. It was wild.
But other places, it's more flexible. People might push a bit or politely squeeze in. It's not rude, just how they do things.
So how do you know what to do? Go with the flow or stick to your own rules?
Watch what everyone else does. If they're in a neat line, you do the same. If it's more of a free-for-all, just assert yourself politely.
Okay, next tricky topic. Tipping. We talked about it with restaurants, but it's not just there, is it?
Nope, tipping is all over the place. What's generous here might be offensive somewhere else. In the US, you gotta tip for lots of things, but in Japan, it's usually not done. They believe good service is just part of the job, so extra money feels weird to them.
So it's not the money itself, it's what it means to them.
Right. And then there's all the stuff you don't say out loud, like body language, gestures, eye contact. They can mean different things depending where you are.
Like the thumbs up. Here it's good, but in some places it's like the middle finger.
Exactly. Even eye contact. In some cultures, it's respectful. In others, it's aggressive.
So you got to learn a whole other language, but without words. It's those tiny cues that matter.
That's where cultural intelligence comes in. It's not just seeing the differences, but changing how you act because of them. You got to be flexible, open-minded, willing to try new things.
So it's not about losing who you are. It's about, like, building a bridge between cultures.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And remember, cultural intelligence, it's a journey, not a destination. You keep learning and adjusting your whole life.
It's appreciating that everyone's different, and that makes the world more interesting.
Exactly. Okay, before we wrap this up, the article talks about being a cultural chameleon. What does that actually mean when you travel?
I think it's like respecting where you are, but still being yourself. You don't disappear. You just add to the experience by sharing and learning.
That's it. You adapt, you're respectful, but you don't lose your own identity. Like a chameleon blending in, but it's still a chameleon.
Okay, so for our listener packing their bags to visit an English-speaking country, what's the most important thing to remember? What's the secret to navigating all this cultural stuff? It's like, think ahead. Learn those key phrases for when you arrive. Finding your way around, eating out, shopping, the basics, and especially for emergencies. But don't just memorize them. Think about how they fit into the culture.
Yeah. Like, you pack your suitcase carefully, right? You think about the weather, what you'll be doing. It's the same with this. You're packing knowledge and respect and being ready to adjust.
So it's about tipping right, waiting in line, being polite, personal space. All those little things can make a big difference in how people see you.
Exactly. And listen, it's okay to mess up. Nobody's perfect, and you're not going to know everything right away. The important thing is to learn from it and try to do better next time.
It's all part of the adventure, right? Even the bumps along the way. This article is about English-speaking places, but this stuff matters everywhere you go.
Oh, absolutely. Every culture is unique and has something special to offer.
So to our listeners, getting ready to travel, remember, be curious, be respectful, and be ready to learn. You never know what amazing experiences are waiting out there.
That's a great way to put it. And who knows, you might even end up helping someone out, like that lady helped me in Japan.
What a great thought. All right, everyone, happy travels. Keep exploring, keep learning, and we'll catch you on our next deep dive.